Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to have you all joining us and very excited for today's Lunch and Learn with Kristen, who's going to be talking about Mi'kmaq language and values, a social worker's introduction. Let's first begin with a land acknowledgement. And as we prepare for a land acknowledgement, let's take a moment to ground ourselves. Being a treaty partner means aligning with Mi'kmaq land-based values. So let's ground ourselves in gratitude and just take a moment to consider where you are and to feel that connection to the land, to feel that gratitude. Perhaps there's a place that you feel especially connected to the land and you might want to call that to mind. If you're lucky enough to be able to look outside and see outside the window at where you are, but maybe it's your garden, maybe it's a beach, maybe it's a hiking trail or park, but wherever you feel most connected, just take a moment to ground in gratitude. And as you will be, I'll be inviting you to share with me in the land acknowledgement. I invite you to take a moment to think about what it is that you're most grateful for. So for example, I am joining you from beautiful unceded Unama'ki, colonially known as Cape Breton. And Unama'ki means land of fog in the Mi'kmaq language. And I never really thought about fog ever until moving here and seeing the fog lifting from the water. And someone once told me that fog is like the universe giving you a big hug. And ever since I heard that, I have this sensation of just profound gratitude because I do feel like over here in Unama'ki, there's something incredibly beautiful that is happening. And I've never felt more connected to a land in my life as here, where there's so many beautiful Mi'kmaq caretakers who've been caring for the land and advocating for it. And so that would be something that I might share in the chat. And I invite you to think about your own gratitude so that you can make the land acknowledgement personal. And I invite you to make sure that you use the correct Indigenous name for where you are joining us from. So for example, if you're joining us from Halifax, instead of using that colonial word, you would use the correct Mi'kmaq name for that. And if you go to placenames.mapdev.ca, there is a way that you can like go and zero in on the specific town or village or where you're located. And there's even a way for you to hear how it's pronounced. So I invite you to do that if you're not yet familiar. And I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking from Unama'ki, which is located on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, whose inherent rights were recognized in the peace and friendship treaties that were signed with the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, and Passamaquoddy peoples from 1725 to 1779. This series of treaties did not surrender Indigenous land, resources, or sovereignty to the British Empire, but instead established rules for an ongoing relationship between nations. The treaties were later reaffirmed by Canada in Section 35 of the Constitution Act in 1982, and they remain active to this day. Let us take this time to pause in reflection and gratitude for the land where we live and work. And when we acknowledge the land, we must also begin to acknowledge the wisdom of this planet and align ourselves with its truths. So we pause in gratitude for all who have and continue to heroically care and advocate for this beautiful land. May we join them in this sacred work. And let us ground ourselves in the wisdom of the land-based Mi'kmaq teachings and values that we must all begin to learn. Let us work to decolonize ourselves, our practice, and this community that we share. By working for justice for all living beings is an expression of our gratitude for being here. Let us take a deep breath and we center ourselves away from the violent ways colonization fills our world and fills us. Let us take a deep breath and work on letting go of the unconscious bias that is everywhere, inside and out. May our session today lead us to be in right relationship with this land and with one another. We're all treaty people, so how does this impact what we do and how we do it? And how will it guide our work together today? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action has specific calls to action that affect us as social workers. And so we take this moment to be mindful of this and to commit to learning and reading these calls to action, as well as the whole report, and reflecting on what that means to each of us individually in terms of our practice. The Nova Scotia College of Social Workers commits to translating this acknowledgement into action by seeking to implement the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. We commit to doing what we can to becoming better treaty partners. We commit to learning and to unlearning. We recognize that social work has not always been safe as a practice, and that we are working to become safer, and recognizing that colonialism and patriarchy and racism and capitalism and environmental terrorism and violence and queerphobia and so many other isms are all connected, and that part of decolonization involves addressing all of these. And we recognize that the brand new 2024 CASW Code of Ethics requires us to shift from the illusion of neutrality to actively becoming anti-racist and fighting against racism and all intersectional prejudice that is part of colonization. And we recognize that this is a journey from denying that it exists because of a place of fear and avoidant discomfort, and that learning to become able to understand involves learning without defensiveness or guilt, to understand the role that we have to play in reconciliation, and to understand how the present is affected by past and present racist policies and actions, and that growing is a learning journey, and that we don't even know what it's like to be on the other side of that growth zone. We can't even begin to imagine when we see that green arrow at the far right of the screen. We don't even know what that could look like, but we commit to learning and working our way towards that in collaboration with the people whose land we are on, and everyone in a collaborative way. And we commit to recognizing the ways in which intersectionality impacts each of us. Intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, who is an African-American feminist, who talked about the ways in which each different prejudice amplifies each other in a way that makes things multiple times worse for people depending upon where they are located. And so we take this moment to reflect upon where we each are located on this wheel of power and privilege. Decolonizing ourselves in our practice means recognizing the ways in which we are each impacted by the colonial system in which we all participate, and from which those of us of settler descent continue to benefit. Each of us, depending on our social location and intersectional positionality, are uniquely impacted or oppressed. For example, those of us from African descent were dispossessed and uprooted from their land and brought to Turtle Island against their will as part of the white supremacy and slave trade that fueled the settlement of this continent. So we take this moment to reflect upon the unique impact of colonization upon each of us and our practice. And so it is within that context that we are so deeply grateful to Kristen, who is here, who's going to share more with us. So I'm going to stop my screen, and I'm going to
thank you so much.
invite her. There you are.
Awesome. Gweni Deluisi Kristen Basque, Leawi Onomagi, Esasonic. Will Dasi Bejidayo, how Junugal Sidis Kinamolino Dahoenin, Me Gejido. So, hi everyone, my name is Kristen Basque. I am from Cape Breton, Eskasoni First Nation, and I'm so happy to be here, even though I'm nervous, but I shouldn't be. But anyways, so what I just said is that I'm really excited to share what I know and my knowledge of language and how I value and I feel language is extremely important as social workers as we work within our communities. Um, and what I just found out, I was going to work on a really fancy, nice presentation, PowerPoint, but I just learned that through diversity and equity, it's better to be simple. Keep it plain and simple and then non-distracting. So I will do that. And I guess, I really want to focus on Mi'kmaq language and the values because like even how as non-speakers, how important it is to make the effort because um, just sharing a little story because I am a storyteller. This really impacted us personally. I remember about 2 years ago, I had gone to the hospital with my daughter, and she was feeling sick. And she's normally, even on a good day, she's shy, kind of nervous personality. So even more so having to go to a hospital, she was extremely nervous and scared. And she was trying to, and my children are both fluent. Like I have a son who's 12 and my daughter who's 17, and they're both fluent in the language. So while we were at the hospital, we were talking in Mi'kmaq and she kept saying, I'm scared. I don't know what to tell the doctor. How would I tell the doctor? Um, Anyways, so when the doctor finally came in, the doctor came in and told her, Gwe, merawalin, waligiskok. And her eyes were like pop, like, oh my God. Um, but just those words alone. And he said, Nin Deluisi, doctor, so and so. And I could physically see her body language get more comfortable. Her anxiousness wasn't as prominent as before when he came in. And she answered him, even though she was a little bit hesitant, she answered him, Gwe, Ninda Luisi Alea. Um, and then he spoke English, but he had set the tone. He had established that relationship with her that made her comfortable, that came to her level to say, it's okay. And so after he examined her and before he left, he said, Walalim, Namulta Sapa, and which means thank you, I will see you again. And the smile on her face, even though she's sick, when he walked out of the room, and she was so like, "Oh my God, he's was he Mi'kmaq?" And I said, "No, he wasn't, but he took the time to learn Mi'kmaq so that he could make Mi'kmaq people feel more comfort and welcoming while in oftentimes when you have to go to an emergency room, you're in distress or you're sick, or so making it more comfortable for them. So then, that was a few years ago, and I always thought about that, and I always thought about, what can we do as social workers to establish that same type of relationships? Because like when we're knocking, especially when we're working in child well-being, we're knocking on the doors, whether it's at the intake level or whether it's at, whatever position you are as a social worker, or even as a therapist, people are coming to you into your office to come see you, taking that effort to just learn those introductory words. So then I was thinking of, how we could do better. And I work with Mi'kmaq Family and Children Services. So like, how can we um, do something along the lines? And so then COVID hit, and then we were living in this virtual communicating world. So I had the opportunity to partner with a lady in my community, Michelle Marshall Johnson, who is the director of language at Mi'kmaq Ginamadiwe as MK. And she volunteered to do language classes with our staff. And so I said, you know, we're beyond, because she said, you know, are we going to teach them like objects like duobody, window, or gupudi, chair? And I said, you know, and we both agreed we are beyond that point. I think we're at a point where we need to introduce the conversational Mi'kmaq to learn phrases. Because I said, if the doctor can do it, and it made such a big difference, we need to step into that uncomfortableness of learning a new language. Um, and for some people, can't even, it's not a new language, it's enhancing language that they know and have heard. So we were very fortunate to have once a week online classes with Michelle. And we did it for a few months. And at the end, because her dad is Albert Marshall, and he's very well known elder who talks about two white seeing. So at the end of our session, we were very, very fortunate to have had him come and do an online 2-hour online session with our social workers to talk about two white seeing as a social worker working in Indigenous communities. So from there, like we still continue to do the work, and we still, like I really am big on language, revitalization of language. You know, anytime that I'm doing any type of work in our agency, I want to incorporate the language, whether developing new programming or new programs or anything, incorporate the language as much as we can, such as one of our programs, Wigamanech Gigmana, or one of our independent transitioning out of care programs, Get Me Dalsy. Get Me Dalsy meaning I am proud of who I am and where I come from, because that's our goal. So like sometimes when you're using language, in the Mi'kmaq language, you could say it in one word, and if you're translating into English, it would take you a paragraph to explain or try to explain. And really, it's not like today, I don't want it to be like a literal translation, because sometimes when you try to literally translate word for word, you lose its entire meaning. And then it translates into something very different. So that's why I think it's really important for us to try to get on board with learning the language. And one thing our communications person at our agency has done, and I'm willing to share these, is little cards for our workers. And I don't know if you could see them very clearly, but they're conversational cards. So it's like hello, gue, and then it'll be the English version, the Mi'kmaq, and then the phonetics. And it has all kinds of different phrases on here to talk about, like, you know, hello, gue, and then the phonetic being it kind of sounds like go away, but really it's it's hello. Nin Deluisi is my name is. So Nin Deluisi Kristen Basque. And then you ask Daluisin Gil, what is your name? And Daluis, and then it gets complicated. Then you'd say Daluis sit, what is their name? Walalin, and you're welcome, Willia. So it has a lot of different sayings on here that could be very useful in the work, whether you're working in child well-being or a therapist or whatever in the schools. Like those little phrases go a long way. Onuisin, do you speak Mi'kmaq? Is another one. So and it's two-sided. So like you have a lot of information packed into a small little card. Um,
I'm
so I
getting messages. Everyone wants to buy it right away. Where do they
yeah,
go?
So, and I'll have my email, like if you want any further information or access, I'll share my email, and I'll make sure that people are getting some of the cards and access to more cards if necessary. Um, the other thing that we have done is, because not just language, but also are incorporating our culture and our traditions as much as we can. Um, we have also developed another, I don't have it here right now, but it's a little booklet, and it has it's a smudge, we call it the smudge cards, but it has the significance of smudging, and also all the medicines and the seven sacred teachings in the card that we often share, because in our office in Eskasoni, we have what a room called Adlas Mal Jijahamish is, and what that translates into where your spirit can rest. So in that room is where we do our circles. We're able to smudge every day. So every day our workers are smudging. We have a big drum. So a lot of our workers start off the day with a drum, so they'll sing the honor song. And what I would say, like, it hits differently when you walk into your office and you smell the smudge. And like, even one of the workers said yesterday, she said, I was having such a rushed, tough morning trying to get to the office and feeling overwhelmed, feeling like, oh. And she said, as soon as I walked in, um, and smelt the smudge and heard the drumming, it was just like, my spirit can rest. Now I'm at a good place to start the day. And sometimes when we had a rough week at work, Fridays like today would be a day that, our smudge rooms would be busy, we'd be drumming. So it's really such, exactly what Glenda's saying. It's such a beautiful way to start the day, especially when you're feeling the pressures, because we're always, as working individuals, we're always trying to find the balance of life, balance of home life, balance of extracurricular activities, or work. And work is a heavy load, is if we're working it as social workers in whatever capacity we're working in. So like, one of the elders also, his name, he's not a Mi'kmaq, but is an indigenous elder. Um, and his name is Jim Dumont, and he did a lot of work with the Thunderbird Foundation, who works a lot, has developed a lot of beautiful trainings through trauma-informed work in Indigenous communities, but also a lot of work around addictions. And so it really, really is important that, something he had said is, anytime that you feel you're stuck or unable to decide which way to go, his biggest thing was, he says, feed it to the language, and the language will guide you. And it's really true. So, and that's why I feel it extremely important that when we are developing programming specific to our Indigenous communities and our families and our children, especially, we incorporate that and feed it to the language, so that we are walking that good path for them. And so when I think about even our language with our kids, I have a rule at my house, where my kids, because this is how powerful it is. I'll give you another, I'm a storyteller, so like, I'll give you another example. So my kids are, my house is always busy because I have kids over and their friends, and so one of the rules is that everybody has to speak Mi'kmaq, or at least try to speak Mi'kmaq when they're over. And so I remember one mom listening to me, like one mom had come to pick up her daughter, and she was saying, "Oh, I wish my," because she's listening to me and my daughter speaking, and she said, "Oh, I wish my daughter spoke Mi'kmaq." And I said, "You know, it's funny." I said, "Your daughter speaks Mi'kmaq when she's here," um, and she was like, "What?" I said, "Yeah," and then she says she doesn't speak it at home, but I know she understands it. I said, it really has to start at home to really promote it, because the story I was going to tell is that, we could have 10 kids here, and you could have 9 fluent in speaking Mi'kmaq, and one person not fluent at all, and I could bet you money that all 9 of those kids will stop speaking Mi'kmaq to accommodate that one person. And so that's kind of where it first started for me, because I said, all of you guys speak Mi'kmaq. Why are you guys speaking English? And they said, well, because so and so doesn't understand. And I said, well, maybe if you guys were speaking Mi'kmaq, then so and so would pick up all the key words and start to understand and start to speak it. So that's kind of where it originated, that rule in my house of Onuisi, Onuisi. And so really, I think it starts at home, and we were very fortunate in Eskasoni to have the Mi'kmaq immersion programs. But it's kind of like I always say to different people that we've talked about language is it's not the sole responsibility of the teacher to teach the child only at school and then not promote it at home. Like, we have to practice what we preach. We have to um, support it at home as well. So, like, and then the way I look at language is this is, you know, all the words that I speak in Mi'kmaq are the same words as my ancestors spoke years and years and years ago. So, like, this is resilience. This is that we need to honor our ancestors by keeping that a language alive and promoting it and using it and revitalizing words that, because there's words, old words that are no longer used, because it's kind of like trends. You have your OG Converse, and then you have your new trendy Converse. So, like, Mi'kmaq language could be the same way, because you have um, the old style of Mi'kmaq, and then you have this new slangy style of Mi'kmaq. Um, and and a lot of times, like, it's funny because we have to make up words, because, like, one time ago, there were no iPads, there were no cell phones, and we have a funny way of adding little adjectives at the end of different things to make it sound like Mi'kmaq. Like, I could say, "Get Miskamui iPad 'em," and really you just add the iPad and then it sounds like Mi'kmaq, Mikalish, or whatever version of or phonem. Miss my phone, go get my phone. So it's funny, Mi'kmaq. And then when you start getting into the writing of Mi'kmaq, then it gets complicated, because we don't have um, so when you compare the alphabets, Mi'kmaq language does not have all of the same alphabets as the English language has. So we have all the vowels, like A, E, I, O, U, um, and we have also a schwa, which makes it like a when you hear the sound, when you see the schwa, it's like an I with a squiggly line across. You make that throat kind of sound like a bit away, like T is bit away, and you have the schwa in there. Um, But also when you start the comma also indicates how you elongate the word. Like when you say like a 3-letter word for would be like ulno, which means the people, which means indigenous. So L apostrophe N U is ulno. But when you see the apostrophe next to the sound, you elongate that. So you'd be like ulno. It wouldn't be like elno. It'll be ulno. So you kind of make it sound a little bit different. And it gets a little bit complicated, like the writing of it, because you could have gesalo, uh, and you spell it out, and it's all the same letter, gesalo, which means I love you. Gesalo means I hurt you. And it's the same spelling, you just move the apostrophe to a different place. And then you have gesalo, which means I'm going to throw you in the fire, or I'm going to throw it in the fire. And the same spelling is just you change the where the apostrophe goes. So it may look like you're saying gesalo, I love you, but you could actually be saying gesalo, I'm gonna throw you in the fire. So it's a little bit the language is funny that way. Um yeah, and our words and how we name things are very much alive. We have a living tense, we have a healing tense. So when we're talking about language, it is really, I think of it as very sacred. I really do believe that all of our history, all of our everything of who we are is embedded in our language. And you could find, within that sacred knowledge, our language provides us the wisdom and understanding of who we are as Ono. And it focuses on the process of like this knowledge and action and verb consciousness. And it's not on nouns or material accumulation. And surprisingly, there are absolutely no curse words in the Mi'kmaq language at all. And the words that are used as curse words are actually our body parts. And so like the curse words um are words that are, whether it's body parts or a description of nature, or if you're going to damn somebody, like, so it's not that curse words or swear words in our Mi'kmaq language. um just trying to think what. Mm, um so the other thing about our Mi'kmaq language is that and in our culture and our traditions and customs is sharing, because Mi'kmaq people give um you know the unique ability to have that eagle viewpoint of sharing of yourself, your resources, your time, your wisdom, without even being asked or expected anything in return. Especially like our value is, like our like the way that we're taught different things. Um, like when I was growing up, you would be praised if you were a self motivator. You didn't, like, because you were raised not to sit there and wait to be asked to do something. You would have to get up and be part of it, because as Mi'kmaq people, we include our children in everything, in our ceremony, in our daily lives, like wakes, funerals, everywhere. Anything, anytime anything's going on, we have our kids there. We have our kids, and they're learning through that process of their role and responsibility as ulno. And so when they're learning about language and they're learning about roles and responsibility, you could be viewed as like if you didn't get up and start helping out at the wake, or if you didn't get up and when people are all group cleaning and you just sat there and waited to be asked, then the elders and the older people would say, "Oh, maligodla, malig," and they would tease to say about how lazy that individual is, kind of, and they would tease until the point that the other person finally says, "Okay, then I'll get up and I'll do it." Or they might give you nicknames based on the way you act. And those nicknames often still remain with you for the rest of your life, pretty much. And most people will still know you by your nickname that you have gotten as a child. Um, so like when you're working in community and you're new to the community, sometimes I think it's really beneficial to ask if people have nicknames, because oftentimes people will be known by, like, one of my friends' nickname is Chunky, and by no means is he chunky at all. He's actually very slim, and he's been very slim all his life. So, like, but everybody knows him as Chunky, but that's not his name. Um, or like we have we like sometimes it was funny because um we have a lady, that a friend of mine, her name is Heidi, and her legal name does not have Heidi in there at all. Like her legal name is something else. And I remember asking her, like, why are you called, why, like, where did Heidi come from? And she said, that was just something my dad used to call me and it stuck with me. And she said now, and she's an older lady, and to this day, many people don't even know that that is not her name at all. That everyone thinks that's her legal name. But like we talk about sharing and giving, um, and that's part of being ono. That's a part of you know, we don't hoard our knowledge, we don't, and being very humble. Um, So let me share this slide with you to show you the alphabets and just to confuse you a little more than probably I'm confusing you now. Um, Let me share. Share. All right. So do you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So in the Mi'kmaq alphabet, and this is how I remembered it because this was how we were taught in school. So there's only P, T, K, J, M, N, Q, S, W. So the way I remember the alphabet is Peter took karate just like Mary never quit school, will you? And that's how I remembered it. So there's 11. Um, but when you look at the P's, because you could be spelling, let's say, bossy. Bossy is Pasi. Bossy means sit down. Um, but it is sounded like a B. So P's are sounded like B's. T's, like let's say Dada, which is Dada, like everybody says father, Dada. It's Taa, but when you sound it out, it's Da. K's are sounded as G's, like let me look for a K word. Giganu. Giganu means our house, Kinu, but it sounds like Giganu, like I'm saying G, but it's K. So it's confusing, but S's are S's, W's W, Y's are ya. And from like your throat sound, people have a hard time with the Q because so in Cape Breton, there's a First Nation community named Wametcook. Wagamitcook is what lots of people say, but it actually is Wahamitcook. That Q is like that sound. Halibudi is a shovel, so that sound is the Q. So a lot of people struggle with that sound. So then the vowels are same as the English, A, E, I, O, U. But like I mentioned, when you have the apostrophes, it's A, E, I, O, like you elongate all of that. So when you look at the conversational, let me see if I could keep on sharing, or maybe not. There. So then this is what I was gonna do in this and maybe I could share this just kind of help you in that conversation. So if we were going to do, let's say, a workshop, I would have like person A and person B practice this. Say gwe, say hello to each other. Say medawule nidap, how are you, my friend? Wale Garugil, I am fine. What about you? Wale means I am fine. I am good. And Daliach is more of like a slang word. So you hear that all the time. Daliach, it's what's going on? What's the news? What's up? So a lot of people use that slang word Daliach. As that, like, how are you? They would just kind of start off with Dalia. Mudalianuk, not too much. So this would be like a good introduction of, like, let's say if you're practicing with a friend. Oh, I have another one. Say, Dami Wigian, where do you live? You could also say Dami Leawin, where are you from? And then Wigi, I live. You could say Nin Wigi Jibuktuk. I live in Halifax. Dleawi is where you could, and then Dleawi means this is where my roots are. This is where I'm actually born and raised. Could be like, let's say if I lived in Halifax, I could say Nin Wigi Jibuktuk Dleawi Essohani. I live in Halifax, but I am originally from Eskasoni. Dami Edulugwen, and where do you work? And the next person could practice by saying, Elugwe ni, I work at Mi'kmaq family. And person A could say, I work at home. Edulugwe niganah. Niganah means my house. Giguwah means your house. Or mo elugo, I don't work. And then oftentimes, so this is also important to know. And I'm really glad this because there's the Mi'kmaq Olnu introduction is what I call it. Because if I were, let's say, in Halifax at a conference and I look around, see who's there, who looks familiar, and let's say I notice another Mi'kmaq person there and I sat with them, if I didn't know them, chances are I'm probably first off gonna ask, Damidleawin, where are you from? And then I'm gonna ask, when in Ungiguk, who are your parents? Who is your family? And then I'll ask, what's your name? Because people, Mi'kmaq people or indigenous people will ask first of like, where are you from? Trying to locate the land that you originated from. And then be like, who's your family? And then it'll be, okay. So what's your name? And then they'll ask the name and they'll be like, oh yeah, I know so and so, da da da. And geez, actually you're my relative, you're my cousin. Or you're like, I know your cousin, or and they make those connections and relationships based on that introduction. So this part here is always important. Like when who are your parents? Ni Nkich, my mom, Deluisid. Because my mom is very loves socializing. She's very, very social, my mother. So like oftentimes I would say, oh, Unkish Nin Rosie Basque. My mom's name is Rosie Basque. And like 8 or 9 out of 10 chance that person probably knows my mom. So and then you establish that relationship that way to say, oh, okay, yeah, and then I mean I know Rosie. And then so this is also Nuch Deluisid, my father's name is. Nuch Wigamat Leawijik, my father's family is from here. So these practice conversations are really it's a really good exercise. It's really good to and really, I know people are often intimidated, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word. Intimidated or scared to try to mispronounce words or say it wrong. But like I wouldn't. I would just try at least you're making the effort and trying. And maybe if you are with a Mi'kmaq speaker, you could ask them like, how do I pronounce it better? Or how would I pronounce it phonetically? But at least making the effort and trying goes such a long way. Um and numultus, because another thing that is there is no word for goodbye in our Mi'kmaq language. All there is numultus. I will see you again. There is no final like I'll never see you again, goodbye. Because we're all connected and we're all seeing each other, and Nidap is my friend. And so like you could say Gwe Nidap, um or numultus up sabonog nidap. I will see you again tomorrow, my friend. So it's these are really good starters to like have those conversations. And if you want these, definitely I'll pass those along, because then you could practice with somebody or you could practice yourself in the mirror to say, okay, ni deluisi, or Midal Willing. Willie Giska Giskuk is today is a beautiful day. And that's a great conversation starter. Even when you're in line up at Costco and you're like, "Ner, ner, ner," and then you're like, oh, you end up talking about the weather all the time with random people, anyways, as just to kind of break the ice. So like if you're saying Welligiska. And even if it's raining, like, it's Welligiska, it's a good day to be alive. It's a good day to be here. I'm grateful to be here. You know, I feel like no matter what day it is, it could be today is a good day. Um, so yeah, I know we have a few minutes left. I want to make sure that if there's specific things that if you wanted me to focus on or ask questions, I'm open to that. Um, but
So there are definitely some questions around requests for the PowerPoint. So you're going to send me the PowerPoint. I put my email address if people want to ask. I can send it. I also put your email address in the chat as well. But I know people might be joining us afterwards, or like watching this on YouTube like a while from now as well. So there there's also like some questions about the cards that you mentioned. Where can people
Yes.
purchase those?
Send
So
me
how
an
can people
email.
purchase it? But for people who might be joining us over YouTube, if you were, you'll send me also that information so that people can contact the NSCSW just in case, so you don't get random emails. Since we got
Yes.
14,000 views on our YouTube channel last year, you probably don't have the time to respond to 14,000 emails. So just in case, just
Yeah.
in case, you can contact NSCSW at nscsw.org, and we'll make sure that we have this PowerPoint and also information for where to get the language cards. Does anyone have any other questions in the chat in terms of perhaps how to learn more about these classes? I know that a lot of the teachers are really focused on immersion and teaching for the Mi'kmaq people because that's part of the healing that needs to happen for Mi'kmaq people to be able to reconnect with their language. But are there other recommendations that you have for how people can begin to learn more about the language, or how to introduce some of this in
Yes.
their practice?
I have 3 things I want to bring up. So the first thing is around, and this is part of the values and customs. So when as a worker, if you are going into homes to Mi'kmaq homes, Olna homes, I would, because I talked a little bit about how sharing, we love to share. We were because anytime anyone comes to my home, I'll offer food or tea, especially tea, always offering something. Um, and some things that I had told workers that when they first came to work with our organization is, when you go out to your homes, when you get offered tea or coffee, don't say no, because if you're saying no, then you're not starting off in that good relationship, because then even though you feel like, oh no, I don't want to bother you with tea or coffee, but the way it could be interpreted is like, what, you're too good to drink my tea or my coffee. um just out of respect, I've downed coffee where I don't even drink and I can't stand coffee, but I'd be like, chugging that back because they had offered it. The other thing is that I know we're driven by documentation and notes and all of this stuff. So like, if you're able to share while you're writing something down, um, and that goes long way into like mistrust and not just fear. If you can write the notes afterwards, right after you leave, then go ahead. But like, if you're writing notes while they're talking in a visit, that may put them at like, oh, what are they writing? Or that when you're looking at establishing really good relationships. The third thing I wanted to focus on is, there are so many resources around Mi'kmaq language, and I want to share because I think MK, I'm going to glaze them up because they are doing a really wonderful job, um, trying to revitalize the language. And they have a lot of different apps. So I'm gonna pull up my iPad, and hopefully they are on here. Okay, here's some of them. I don't know if you could see them. Oh shoot. Uh, okay, where did it go? But if you had, like, I don't know about Samsung users because I don't have Samsung phone, but I do have iOS. And iOS, the iPhones have the ability to um, pull up a lot of these apps. So like, here I am. No. Anyway, I'll go. If you searched up Mi'kmaq Ginama Dioe in your search bar, you will have access to, let's say, it's called, like Linda had mentioned that in her comment, in Ulnuisudi, that has sound bites that also you're able to access. So like if you didn't know how to pronounce it, there's a little arrow and then there's someone sounding it out. That, like if it says neen, then you press the button, it would say, someone would say neen. So you can learn and practice some of the words there. They also have other apps on there as well that have a lot of different, like they have storybooks that they could be read in English and also in Mi'kmaq. So you have different, they've created a lot of content. I wonder if you see that better. Oh no. I must have my oh there. Do you see?
Yes.
So there's the ESK, that app there is specifically so I downloaded that app a while ago because when my kids were in immersion, it would have all of their sight words. So some from primary, their units. I don't anyways, it would have their units. So then there's words that would have like mean different words, but like there's also the MK also has one that is called Tal-Tluen, which means how do I say it? So then when you go into that app, you could pick I and then the next page said and the next page pick a list of different things and it will and at the end it would put all your words together in a sentence and then you press play and it'll show you how to say it. So there's a lot of different apps available through Mi'kmaq Ginama.
So, and I put that in the chat, but for our YouTube people who are not joining us live, you can see KINU.ca, and then there's a whole section on mobile apps, and it has everything that you can download. So I'm going to actually screen share just for people to be able to see what you just showed on the larger screen. So you should be able to see it here. This is
Yes.
here are all of the mobile apps. What's great about this is as social workers, we can take this and go. And even if we're struggling and we're not doing it right, we can at least show that we're trying. And that in itself can be a way, as Kristen said, of engaging with people and being like, I'm trying, please educate me. And imagine how trust building it is for perhaps someone to be like, oh, look, I'll show you my favorite part of this app because maybe they use it too. So you can see all of these different.
They also have learning tools that could be purchased, such as flashcards. So they have flashcards that um, that would have the Mi'kmaq language and learning the Mi'kmaq language on there. They have a whole books, like you see the electronic books here from Robert Munch. Salt is Yapcho is my favorite. I love, that book as well as some other books. They have other coloring plate pages. Um, they have the Olnu stickers, which is like, how you send a text, you could send NISK or like Dalia or like those things. Nilul is like recipes that can be found in that app. Um, and some of these are Tal-Tluen, I mentioned that one, the yellow one with the so that is
On
the
the bottom
building
left.
of the sentence. Um, so those are really I am going to help Najia Bohanamwe. So like that could be different things that maybe helpful phrases or words. This one here is the big one. This is the most popular because it has a lot of information in that Onuisudi one. And you know, like really, MK is doing a wonderful job in trying to do you know, language revitalization and supporting language. So hats off to them.
And Willalan Nidap, so very grateful to you for sharing some of this and helping us begin to understand how we can be better treaty partners and how we can learn the language of this land. And really, I always think of like it's sort of like dead naming using the wrong name. Like how if this is to me live naming, it's like as when we use the right word, when we use the right language, that's our way of giving whatever power and strength we have back to the people of this land and learning their language and helping it come alive. The story you told, Kristen, of how everyone went and tried to accommodate the one person that didn't speak Mi'kmaq. How can we learn to tolerate our discomfort? That's part of truth and reconciliation for people of settler descent, where colonization tells us we're afraid of doing things wrong, but simply making the effort, that is so huge in building trust. And the story you shared about your daughter and the doctor and how she physically was able to breathe and relax. And we're so grateful to you for your resources. There's a lot of beautiful conversation in the chat of gratitude. And Willalan, we're deeply grateful to you for sharing of your wisdom with all of us. So Kristen's going to send the PowerPoint to me, and you all saw kinu.ca is the website. There's a whole section on mobile apps that you can do the /mobile apps, and you can find all of that. And we look forward to continuing to learn from you in the future. We're so grateful for your leadership and dedication to the college as part of the Decolonization and Indigenization Committee, as we are continuing to work on our strategic plan for how to better align our work with the Mi'kmaq values of this land. So I don't know if there are any closing comments that you wanted to say. Everyone's like, we want more of you and more of your wisdom and learning. So please know that we are so grateful.
Well, I really want to thank everybody and you know, for being here and participating and I really enjoyed this. So well all y'all, said thank you all.
Well, Alan, and may everyone have a restorative weekend. And if you're joining us on YouTube, please check us out. We have many different courses that are part of our mandatory truth and reconciliation education. And we're so grateful to everyone for joining us.